Okay, good evening. I'm Krista McNamara, your Darien Town Clerk. Today is Monday, June 27th. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Representative Town Meeting. We have 80 people present here this evening, which constitutes a quorum. I hand it over to Seth Morton, your moderator. Thank you.
Please let me do this. I think you'll hear me much better. Welcome, everybody, to a very auspicious evening. First item is acceptance of the agenda. Without objection, I'll accept the agenda. Are there any objections? Thank you. Next item is approval of the minutes of June 6. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of June 6? Can I have a second, please? Thank you. Did you get a second okay, Krista? I love it with the masks.
I'm sorry, who was our second?
Tom Moore.
Sounds like Adeletta. Or Tom Moore. Tom Moore. Tom Moore. Great. Any corrections, additions? Okay. Seeing none. I'll accept acclamation. All in favor of approving the minutes? Aye. Say aye. Opposed? I hear none. Abstentions? I see none. If you have an abstention, you can give it to Krista afterwards. I have just a couple of announcements. This is a special meeting of the RTM to consider purchase of the property known as Great Island. It is a working session of the RTM, at the end of which there will be a vote on the purchase. It is not a public hearing. The RTM has already gathered extensive information. Members of the RTM have toured the property in person. So this group here tonight is well informed, well up to speed, and ready to make a decision. The procedure is subject to Robert's Rules of Order, which include decorum and debate. No calling your neighbor a jerk, you know, that sort of thing. The RTM is apolitical. We do not discuss politics here. The RTM will accept public comments tonight. We do not discuss, we have received extensive public input through a public hearing, public committee and district meetings, viewing recorded messages and emails. Tonight, all emails and letters sent to the RTM will be included in the minutes of this meeting. So it all becomes official, it all becomes part of the meeting. And so those who sent the letters should not feel they have to present them again here tonight because they are being included. Individual public commentary will be limited to, I'm going to change my mind and go with 3 minutes. The reason being we have two people signed up for public discussion. If we had 30, it'd be a different story, but 2, we could go to 3 minutes. So I'll allow 3 minutes. It's important for presenters here tonight from the public to be concise. This body is well informed, so you don't have to embellish a lot. When they hear you, they'll know what you're talking about and they'll understand your points. Being concise and stating your case is really important. Now I'll just introduce Town Council briefly to explain executive session and how that works and why it works and why we've used it. Wayne Fox, Town Council.
Good evening. Nice to see you all. Thank you for coming out this evening on what is a very important vote for our town. When I was walking in this evening, I happened to speak with Clara, who was mentioning to me the fact that a number of the folks with whom she had spoken, a number of folks on the committee which she chairs, were somewhat concerned about these executive sessions that we had and why we were having them and what was the purpose of them and what went on. And I mentioned to her and wanted you to know that the Connecticut General Statutes, the FOI Act, which is very strict and interpreted very narrowly, is broad enough to allow an executive session when a town like ours is dealing with the acquisition, lease, or sale of property. It allows you to go into executive session and discuss things in executive session which you would not wish to be known publicly. In addition to that, under a separate section of the statutes, it lists some 24, 25 exceptions. Those include things as title searches, engineering evaluation reports, phase 1, phase 2 evaluations of what's on or under the ground. I can assure you that, and let me add one thing, virtually any committee that met, including but not limited to the Board of Finance, including but not limited to the Board of Selectmen, discussed certain aspects in executive session. The purpose of it is that we can, and what we did, was discuss what we were doing as a community. We were doing a phase 1, we were doing a phase 2, a preliminary evaluation of what we found. We talk in terms of the title search, which in my experience was one of the most complex I had ever seen. It had some 400 pages of different transactions that went back and forth between individuals and trusts, and I could give a report of what we were doing and how we were coming along and timing for things such as that, which was more appropriate and allowed under the very broad statute to be done and to have occurred. There was nothing secretive, there was nothing unusual, there was nothing we were trying to hide, but we were doing what we are allowed to do under the statute to keep our people informed as to what was going on and what was to be expected in the future. So I just wanted to add that, as I told Claire that I would. If you have any questions on it, I would be happy to answer those for you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Wayne. So, the first item on our agenda, there was one other thing that, I hate to bring this up, but if you didn't lock your car tonight, it would be a very good idea to go out and do it. That's a public service message from the Public Health and Safety Committee. So it brings us to the first item on the agenda, item 22-21. Speaking on behalf of the Finance and Budget Committee, Jack Davis, Chair.
I've yet to figure out how to wear a mask and not fog glasses.
The mask doesn't work.
My mask does work.
Never mind.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3, Chair of the Finance and Budget Committee. I move Resolution 22-21 to consider and approve the purchase of the property commonly known as Great Island. Is there a second? Second. I see Jim Cameron. Whilst I would typically request to waive the reading of the resolution, I believe it's important to read this resolution in its entirety. Whereas the town of Darien has the opportunity to purchase 60-plus acres of land commonly known as Great Island, and whereas said property is currently owned by the members of the Steinkraus family, and whereas the Board of Selectmen has approved the acquisition of said property, and whereas the Board of Selectmen has approved the funds to acquire said property, and whereas the Board of Finance has approved the funding of said property and the use of bonds and/or short-term notes for the acquisition of said property, and whereas under the applicable provisions of the Charter, in particular Section 48, Section F, The representative town meeting has the authority to approve the sale or acquisition of property by the town. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the representative town meeting of the town of Darien hereby approves and authorizes the purchase of 60 plus or minus acres of the property commonly known as Great Island, and authorizes the first selectman to take the necessary steps and execute the necessary documents to acquire said property. This is the first of two resolutions regarding the purchase. Typically, on purchases such as this, we merge the two together, but in this particular case, we will be approving the purchase first and the funding second. Both resolutions need to be passed because, contrary to how well you think we are, we do not have $103 million sitting in our checking account. So unless we figure out how we're going to fund it, the second part of the purchase can't be executed. It should also be known that if either of these fail to pass, the purchase, as I said, cannot be effectuated. In addition, if either one fails, the last resolution, which is 2223, which is the establishment of a special revenue fund, becomes moot. So the role of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee is to review the financial proposals presented to the RTM and make recommendations for this legislative body and our citizens. In this particular case, we felt that the structure did not meet what we were looking for, and what was sent to all members of this body, and I understand distributed elsewhere, was a standard 5-year pro forma model which would have been expected by any corporate senior management approving such acquisition or investment. Our approach was to establish a base case for Town Board of Ed business as usual, takes into account the entire town budget and its projected expenditures in both its core business and growth. As one committee member, Mark Adeletta, stated, most of the town is primarily interested that we maintain Darien's high quality of services and excellent education. Our model did exactly that. On top of that base case, we added the incremental cost, debt, operation, and investments for Great Island purchases. So I'm going to quickly run through what was presented and some of the concepts that we used, just in case somebody didn't read it. No, that's not a good show, is it? That's a better show. Okay, for the base model, based upon our conversations and some of the things, because F&B is already looking at fiscal year 24 beyond the one we just budgeted, the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen operating budget is growing by 3.25% in fiscal year 24-25 and 3% thereafter. Sorry, library, but we had their growth limited to 2.75, which is what they've been doing. We used the capital from the Board of Ed and Board of Selectmen 6-year plan. We made a modification for Pear Tree. We took out the ARPA funds, and we adjusted for fire engines, because even though we might be saying we're going to buy a fire engine this year, we don't pay for it for 24 months, so we moved those funds accordingly. The debt, we used Munistat for the HHR and the other debt. We added projects that we knew were occurring, and this based upon conversations with others. Reimagine Library for Middlesex, Darien High School, and Tokenique. We know that's happening. We talked about the year with Duke. We added in something for Pear Tree Point, and I mentioned the fire engines. These projects are included in both cases. We did not reduce the Great Island value from the base case grand list. We used the Board of Finance's grand list growth of 75 basis points and the 3 years of adding $150 million, of which 105 is taxable. We grew general revenues by 1%, and we calculated what the incremental revenue is because of the growth in the grand list. The town always makes a little extra money because the grand list grew, and so we allocated some of that to the unassigned fund balance because fund balance has to be met at a minimum 15%. We did 16.5, and the rest was allocated to reduce the taxes. That resulted in this model. We also did some other assumptions, such as we typically bond some of our capital that we're doing, so we took out $2 million a year. We calculated out what that incremental debt service was, and the bottom line happens to be the incremental amount of funds that we're getting from revenue from the fact that the grand list grew. The model projects a compound annual growth rate of approximately 2.2% from the approved fiscal year 23 budget to fiscal 28. On the pro forma for Great Island, we used the same starting point. We removed the Great Island value from the grand list. We used the Great Island debt per munistat. We used the notes interest rate, and then we used the 30-year bond that was provided. We added operating expense in fiscal year 24 at $500,000, adding it to $750,000, and then grew it by 3%. We created infrastructure debt. I know the Board of Finance said $8 million or $2 million per year. We did $2 million in the first year, $4 million in the second year, being 24 and 25, and we bonded that. And then we said, okay, there's some development costs, and I'm going to say my joke. I'll also give you the answer to that. I've been known to say I don't really care when we're looking at the development whether or not the town builds the largest Chuck E. Cheese in the Manor House, because it doesn't matter, we're building something. However, I've been told by Monica, we are not building a Chuck E. Cheese. So we have development of $5 million per year, totals $15 million. We bonded that so that we've put in $21 million of additional investment over those years because we know something's there. And these are placeholders. We're not defining what they are. The revaluation was not taken into account in either the base case or the GI. So if you look at the results from this, the 5-year compound annual growth rate is 3.3% versus the 2.2. Full services continue in both these models. We're not changing how we operate this town. We're not shortcutting education. We're not shortcutting town services. We have a slight difference because we've bonded other things that weren't in the other models you've seen. So our peak debt rises to approximately $22 million versus the 19+ million presented in other models. Our projected cost per property includes both cumulative and estimated costs. And there was one thing that I've had questions on, so I'm just going to go to the last page of this. I will admit, when I did this one sheet, the first thing in my household was, how much are we paying? But if you're looking at this, the amount that we're allocating, because we have a base case and because we have the case for Great Island, we can determine what the incremental process of Great Island is doing to our general fund, and so we come up to about 110 basis points. The second line that says this is the cost for incremental cost for Great Island, those costs are included in the above line. Then you don't have to add the two of them together. This just separates that out so you can see that. So And thank you for the patience for everybody who were looking at that and had responded earlier. So, as I mentioned, we looked at this had the town not purchased. With Great Island and all the potential needs over the next 5 years, we estimated the annual tax increase would be closer to 3.3%. The incremental debt investment costs associated with Great Island will represent just under 5% of the total expenses over the next 5 years. So when you look at what we have to raise through taxes, 5% of that will be Great Island. However, the increment in the mill rate is only 110 basis points. I mentioned the projected debt is going up. There will be, in our calculation, a significant increase in total debt. And since we're going to be doing the funding, I'm going to cover some of this more in the second resolution so you don't have to hear it twice. The Board of Finance had debt rising above $240,000. F&B has debt rising over they have a $240 million. F&B has debt rising over $250 million. There's been questions whether or not there'll be a downgrade. I can't answer that. But the town will retain its tax collection rate, the ability to pay for increases, and this purchase will not have an impact on Darien's ability to access capital through the debit markets. And they look at this separately. They look at town debt, they look at school debt, and they look at sewer debt, and we have plenty of room in all three of those. However, just in case, and that's a big if we get downgraded, the incremental cost on future debts is only between 15 to 30 basis points, resulting in a minor amount. And so if you look at the mill rates that we projected, you would only add 2 or 3 basis points to that mill rate to come up with that calculation. We talked about in F&B a couple of things. One is we do have a concern that with the new reval coming, that if there is a change in who's paying for taxes shifting down again, which happened 2 revals ago, plus with inflation, we are concerned about those who are on fixed income. But we're going to watch this carefully, and we'll work, as I'm sure the Board of Finance is and the Board of Selectmen is, and we'll work with all parties if we're finding that to be the case. Not promising anything, we just say we're going to monitor this. You've also heard that there's blank canvases. I'll tell you something that was said in the committee. We liked the 4 areas that were identified, but many of our committee would like to see 2 of those canvases keeping predominantly blank 10 years from now. This is a 2 to 10 year project. So the wilderness and the coastal, that may still be pretty much of a blank canvas when we're back here a decade from now seeing how this all worked out. The last part, will this provide each home with increased value? Is the potential quality of life worth the cost? Honestly, I can't and F&B could not answer that question. But I can personally say, and we talked about this, when my family moved to Darien, we were interested in 3 things: schools, commute to New York because that's where we were working, and low taxes. A realtor took us on a tour of Cherry Lawn, the beaches, the train stations prior to even seeing our first house. Bert Van Stupenagel added something to that in our meeting, and I think it was very worthwhile. Bert said, if we purchase this, realtors will take potential homeowners first to Great Island, then to our new schools, then to the beaches, to Highland and Cherry Lawn, and to the train stations before they even make their first visit to the new house. I don't know that that adds to anyone's value, but I can say that's a pretty impressive tour of Darien. The RTM F&B committee met on June 15th and voted 9 in favor of this resolution and 1 against. The vote against this purchase was primarily due to the uncertainty on the Board of Ed and Board of Selectmen budgets and the fact that they might be squeezed due to the incremental costs and debt associated with this purchase. My understanding is that individual will be speaking later. The majority of the F&B committee does recommend approval of this resolution to the full RTM. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack. Very nice. What I'll do is we'll go through now and get the presentations from the other committees, and then I'll open it up to questions on the presentations. You will have just heard them. There may be questions that come to mind as you see these presentations, so I'll open it up. It's a little bit different than we normally do, but I think there's a lot of information coming out. You may have questions, so I'll open it up to the RTM for questions after we do the last one, which is Public Works. But next is the Park and Recreation Committee, Adele Conniff, Chair.
Good evening. RTM Parks and Recreation Committee, 2221, excuse me, and 2222. The Parks and Recreation Committee met on June 16th, 2022, to discuss and vote on the purchase of Great Island by the town of Darien. We voted on the purchase and the funding of the purchase in one motion. With 14 of 16 members present constituting a quorum, the committee voted 10 in favor of the purchase, 0 opposed, with 4 abstentions. The abstentions were because of financial concerns and wanting to hear from constituents at district caucuses. The Park and Rec Committee was the first RTM committee to vote on the Great Island purchase. We had a tight timeline, but were able to prepare ourselves to make an informed decision on this important town opportunity. We went on property tours, reviewed the contract, and attended or watched Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance meetings, as well as the Great Island Public Information Session and public hearing. At our June 16th meeting, we asked questions of our first Selectman, Monica McNally, Board of Finance Chairman Jim Palin, Town Administrator Kate Bush, and Town Council Wayne Fox. We asked a lot of questions, many of which were echoed in other RTM committee meetings. We discussed management of the property and whether a conservancy was the way to go, among other options. We were glad to hear that whatever management model was decided upon, the process would be inclusive. There were financial questions as to whether the town could afford the purchase and how it would affect homeowner taxes, as well as future town budgets. We have been assured the town can afford the purchase, and the effect on our taxes has been explained. There are a number of dilapidated structures on the property which will be expensive to restore. Our committee was relieved to hear the process going forward will likely be slow and decision-making inclusive. Questions about the contract were answered, as well as questions about the roads, sewer access, and general security. Thank you to our guests for their thoroughness in answering our questions, as well as their willingness to discuss those answers. They were always professional. Sorry. What can we say about the beauty of Great Island that has not already been said? Or about the incredible opportunity we will give to our community to enjoy nature for years to come? During the pandemic, we rediscovered the importance of our parks and learned that parks are important to our well-being. Our parks remain very busy, overly busy. The Parks and Recreation Commission is committed to expansion of parklands and voted in a sense of the meeting in favor of the purchase. Purchasing open space is consistent with our town plan of conservation and development. There is no doubt that preserving this island for all to enjoy is important. Instead of cutting down trees for new development, we will be preserving a gorgeous tree canopy. There are endless recreational opportunities waiting to be explored. Walking trails, kayaking, birding, sailing, summer camp programs, marine educational programs, etc. All the while being good stewards of our environment. As our committee members said, how could we not take advantage of this opportunity? The island is a treasure. Awesome. The RTM Parks and Recreation Committee voted in favor of the purchase of Great Island and encourages the full RTM to do so as well.
Thank you, Adele. Now for Planning, Zoning, and Housing Committee, Amy Barsanti, Chair.
Hello, this is Amy Barsanti, Chair of RTM Planning, Zoning, and Housing Committee. On May 10th, the Planning and Zoning Commission met to discuss and take action on the mandatory referral for the town's consideration of the purchase. After deliberations, they concluded the purchase was consistent with the 2016 Town Plan of Conservation and Development, specifically Chapters 5, Preserving Open Space, and Chapter 6, Managing Coastal Resources, and issued the mandatory referral 1-2022. On May 23rd, the Selectmen entered into a contract to purchase Great Island for $103 million. Key provisions include ratification by the RTM by June 28th and a 75-day diligence period for the town to do necessary investigations on various matters, including but not limited to Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental studies and title searches. Due diligence started immediately after contract signing and is currently ongoing until August 7th, 2022. If the RTM does not ratify the contract by June 28th, either party can terminate the agreement immediately thereafter. If the town is not satisfied with the outcome of their due diligence and they are unable to negotiate a successful resolution of said issues, they retain the right to terminate the agreement before August 7th, which is the conclusion of their due diligence period. An independent appraiser was hired by the town to calculate the highest and best use valuation. Their analysis supported the development of potentially 25 single-family homes with total value approximating $107 million. The Board of Selectmen met on June 16th to discuss and take action on the purchase. They voted 4-1 in favor. On June 15th, the Board of Finance met to discuss and take action, and they voted 4-1 in favor. The Planning, Zoning, and Housing Committee has met 3 times to discuss the purchase. At our regular meeting in May 26th, and at 2 special meetings held June 16th and June 23rd. The overwhelming majority of our members toured the property in person. Our initial May meeting was used as a brainstorming session to prepare for the anticipated time-sensitive assignment. At our special meeting on June 16th, we had Jeremy Ginsberg, Director of Land Use, and Steve Alvani, Chair of Planning and Zoning Commission, and Adam Balgach, also from P&Z Commission, in attendance. We had 11 of 15 members present, representing a quorum. At our June 23rd special meeting, we had quite a full house, 13 of 15 members present, representing a quorum. Additionally, we had Monica McNally, First Selectman, Jim Palin, Chair of Board of Finance, Dan Bubgardner, Board of Finance, Steve Alvani, Chair of PZ Commission, Wayne Fox, Town Attorney, Ed Gentile from Public Works, Kate Bush, Town Administrator, Jack Davis, Chair of RTM F&B, and Patty Bumgardner from RTM Parks and Rec. Over the course of our meetings, our committee evaluated the town's potential ownership of Great Island, as well as the potential outcomes of not owning the island. We wrestled with many unknowns: roads, services, safety, liability, access into and out of the property, and last but certainly not least, the financial assumptions and implications. Our committee members followed the thoughtful deliberations and investigations of our fellow RTM members, Public Works, Public Health and Safety, Parks and Recs, and F&B, as well as attending public hearings, Board of Finance meetings, and district caucuses. And we listened to constituents who reached out to share their opinions on both sides. In the end, our committee's analysis focused on topics most relevant to PZ&H. First, we evaluated what could be built within our current regulations. Potential development of the 60-acre site under our current zoning regulations for R1 zone could accommodate 25 single-family homes, or potentially more. Alternatively, under the senior overlay zone that was created in 2014 for the development of Settlers Trail, every 3-acre cluster could potentially support 6 townhomes, significantly increasing the density. Currently, the town of Darien is approximately 97% developed. Acquiring open space for Darien residents is consistent with the town plan of conservation and development. The purchase of a 60-acre parcel of land with coastal resources will most certainly never be available again. It simply does not exist, nor do we have the ability to create it. Number 2, any proposed development outside of our current regulations of zoning, either for increased density or for special use purposes, would require an application to Planning and Zoning Commission. It's reasonable to assume a developer may consider plans outside of our local zoning requirements and regulations. Number 3, it's important to note that the planning and zoning oversight would apply to the town as well if they were the owner of Great Island. Our regulations will require subsequent mandatory referrals and/or P&Z Commission applications for any usage, substantial improvements, or changes to the property in the future. Therefore, residents will have opportunity to be heard as plans develop. Number 4, determining legal and safe access into and out of the property was a key consideration for our committee. As per the survey prepared by Redness and Mead, the boundaries of the Great Island purchase includes only one intersection point with public roadways at the gatehouse entrance on Goodwise River Road. Portions of this access roadway are only 1 lane in width. Ed Gentile from Public Works evaluated the feasibility and costs of widening areas of that access roadway from Goodwise River Road to the turnaround circle in order to adhere to the 20 to 22 foot width safety requirement. He reported that it is feasible and the costs would be between $400,000 and $600,000. Additionally, Ed reported installing some Phase 1 parking to provide preliminary public access would be between $300,000 and $550,000. It is unclear at this time whether the public will be able to use the easement rights over Great Island Road if the town were to purchase this property. Therefore, the committee felt it quite important to understand the feasibility of widening this access roadway from Goodwise River Road into 2 lanes into that circle. Number 5, the location of certain oyster beds to be excluded from this purchase are unclear at this time. Restricting public access to the portion of the coastline in this area will need to be considered for the future. Given the fact that Great Island has over 1.5 miles of coastline, our group did not feel that this future potential restriction would overly impact the use or value of the property. Number 6, our committee also spent a fair amount of time discussing the future governance structure of Great Island. It was an important consideration to our group to learn that the Board of Selectmen is committed to evaluating structures specifically discussed, a conservancy model and a commission-type model. Our group liked the idea of a dedicated body overseeing the development and operations of the island. And lastly, number 7, although our committee is not the primary committee assigned in determining the financial feasibility of the purchase, we did feel strongly about understanding the near-term investments required to get a baseline understanding on what it will take to make this property accessible to the public. We also felt important to know if the revenue generated from the current tenants, excluding the equestrian facility, will sufficiently cover expenses. Jack Davis and Jim Palin both described their assumptions and valuations on both matters. And I'd like to take this time to thank Jack and his entire F&B committee for their hard work and dedication over the past few weeks. Tonight, we are voting whether to affirm this purchase with the aforementioned provisions and protections. We are also voting on the corresponding appropriation and special purpose fund. As much as our committee would like to have answers and insight into the results of the due diligence studies, we simply do not have that luxury tonight. Additionally, tonight's decision is not about determining the future uses of this property, nor is it about determining the governance structure. Although much of our discussions and deliberations considered future uses and governance, when it came time to vote, our committee focused our decision-making on whether this purchase was consistent with the 2016 Town Plan of Conservation and Development, and if there are any unsurmountable issues that would prevent the town residents, present and future, from the use and enjoyment of this property. We felt an obligation to the full RTM to give a thorough report of our findings and our opinions, and to report our committee's vote. Thank you for your patience in hearing my long report. With 13 of 15 members present at our June 23rd special meeting, we voted 12 in favor, 0 opposed, and 1 abstention. Thank you very much. Board of Finance voted 6-1. My apologies for the error.
Thank you, Amy. Very detailed. Nice job. For Public Health and Safety, Mac Patrick, Chair.
Good evening. I'm Mac Patrick, Chair of District 5 and Chair of Public Health and Safety. The Public Health and Safety Committee met virtually on June 15th with 11 of 15 members present, constituting a quorum. Initial public discussion was held regarding the Town of Darien purchase of the 60-acre Great Island as it relates to aspects of public health and safety. As Chair, I noted I would be referring to a summary of terms document provided by Wayne Fox, our Town Council. Mr. Fox stated in the document that discussions related to the specific environment and engineering issues on the island were to be held in executive session. We then met in executive session for approximately 30 minutes and discussed the concerns regarding those issues in details. When we resumed outside of executive session, the Public Health and Safety Committee voted unanimously to approve the purchase of the property with the understanding that issues of environmental and engineering inspections, traffic safety, police, fire, emergency medical service, and promotion of mental health, which were all discussed in detail in our executive session, be satisfied. In that regard, we ask the full RTM to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Now for Public Works, Rolf Oben.
Good evening. My name is Rolf Oben, Chair of Public Works Committee for the RTM. The Public Works Committee held 2 special meetings to discuss the acquisition of the Great Island. All members of the committee have toured the property, mostly during the RTM organized tours. The property is both wondrous and alarming at the same time. The main house harkens back to the Gilded Age. However, the building has been uninhabited and dormant since the 70s and will require close inspection for electric and plumbing utilities. While there are sewer pipes available for hookup, the buildings on the island are discharging to septic systems. The land is largely undeveloped, providing what's characterized as a blank canvas. There are areas that could be looked at as a wildlife sanctuary, but this all relates to the end use of the property, which is yet to be determined. Depending on the use of the island its development may require numerous project milestones scheduled over a period of years. The Public Works Committee has been made aware in Executive Committee of areas requiring necessary remediation and removal of equipment and material before the island can be safely opened to the public. The cost of the remediation and material removal has yet been fully determined. Several other concerns are the narrow roadway that leads widening from Goodwives River Road to the traffic circle. Allowing for increased traffic flow and emergency vehicle access, the roadway on the island itself will need grading, possible widening, and paving. A rough estimate to address these road issues is between $400,000 and $600,000. There is limited parking that will not support increased visitations to the island. To establish gravel surface pocket parks of 10 to 12 spaces dispersed on various locations on the island would roughly cost $300,000 to $350,000 for a gravel-type parking area. If you want to change that to asphalt surfacing, it would increase the estimate cost from $500,000 to $550,000. There are no public restrooms, again, pending user determination. Some areas of the island are defined by FEMA as flood areas AE, which carry a 26% chance of hazardous flooding during a 30-year period. Suffice it to say that there are aspects of the island that need to be understood and resolved before it can be open to the public. The Public Works Committee is concerned about the short-term impact on the town budget and any added workload to the Town of Darien Public Works Department. With 8 of 12 committee members present at the committee meeting of June 22nd, 5 voted in favor of the resolution to purchase the Great Island, 1 opposed, and 2 abstained. Since the meeting was in person, 3 members were on conference call, and in general, they all expressed interest in favor of the purchase. Should the RTM vote in favor of purchasing the island, the committee feels the town will need a dedicated, diligent stewardship of the island. In this regard, the committee voted on a statement of recommendation to the RTM, which reads as follows. We, the RTM Public Works Committee, strongly recommend an independent commission be established to manage the affairs of the Great Island that will segregate the financial and operational management of the island from the rest of the business of the town. 7 of the 8 members in person at the meeting voted in favor of the statement, 1 abstained. Thank you.
Thank you, Rolf. Now, I will open to the RTM questions on the presentations. While they're fresh, we've just heard 5 committees get up here and put out a lot of information. Some questions before you kind of lose it in your mind, I thought I'd give you a chance to ask questions right now on the presentations themselves. I'll come back to you for debate. Plenty of time for debate, but any questions on the presentations themselves? Teresa, hi. Here's the, come on, here, you have to come down to the mic.
Hey, can you get my steps in?
Thank you.
I'm Italian, so I'm pretty loud from back there. Anyway, could you tell us why people abstained from the vote? Was it because of their jobs or finances? Just curious why people abstained. Abstained, why did people abstain from their votes?
The reason for the abstentions don't count. They don't count as far as the number of people voting, and they don't, they're just nice, and you can record yourself as an abstainer, but,
But usually when people abstain, they have a reason for abstaining. I'm just wondering what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, if you had abstentions, does anybody have a sense of why they abstained? Okay, and Rolf's got one too, so,
Planning, zoning, and housing had one abstention, and it was due to lack of finalized details on outstanding items.
thank you. Rolf?
I abstained, and my reason was simply that I was looking for more information before making a final decision, and I think the other person felt similarly.
Thank you, Rolf. So it appears the abstentions were pretty much just because people felt they needed more information. Okay, yeah, yes,
With this purchase,
yes. your
oh, I'm
name-
sorry,
well,
Laura Pesh-Gray, RTM member, District 5. We have had a lot of flooding in town, and I'm wondering, with this purchase, how does that impact the needs of any kind of emergency issues with another flooding? What's the plan to remediate that? And will this purchasing affect the overall health and safety of the town regarding flooding specifically?
Well, okay, there, we've probably got three committees. I could, maybe Rolf, you think? Yeah, Public Works.
In regards specifically to the Great Island, as a result of the Superstorm Sandy that came through, the levels were changed for what was considered floodplains, and it affected many parts of the town of Darien, and it certainly also is affecting the Great Island. In terms of the effect of this on the Great Island, certainly there is actually flooding that goes on at the Great Island in severe storms right now. It's just a matter of if you get a very, very severe storm, like Superstorm Sandy again, it's going to flood significantly in various areas. The marshland will flood out, which will block off access to the island. The northeast corner of the island will also flood out. The beach area will flood out. The polo grounds will flood out. So that's the impact that it will have on the Great Island. So I only point it out because this has to be taken into consideration for any development on the island. You certainly don't want to be building any structures or anything within the floodplain. And if you even tried to do so, it would be subject to FEMA regulations, which means they would have to be elevated, all the utilities that relate to the building, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the situation with regards to Great Island. I don't see that posing any danger per se to any of the other surrounding homes, because basically they're all in the same situation with FEMA regulations as is the island. And if they are in a floodplain, they'll have to deal with the same issues. So it's not creating any greater danger for anybody in the area or for the town per se, other than to be aware of the fact that it will be subject to FEMA regulations. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay. In that case, I'll move to town officials. Monica McNally, first selectman.
Good evening, RTM. Terrific to see all of you here tonight. I would like to thank all of you for coming. You've heard me and others speak at length about the merits of acquiring Great Island and what we as a community might choose to do with it, so I won't repeat myself on that. I remain convinced that this investment in open space is the right decision for Darien, and that by working together and potentially with the assistance of private support, we can shape Great Island into a town asset that carefully combines investment and preservation. My purpose tonight for my comments is just to give you my perspective and a little bit of additional information. So tonight's vote includes the RTM's approval of the acquisition of Great Island and the appropriation of the $103 million for the purchase. The contract includes a due diligence period that began on May 23rd and concludes on August 6th. During this period, we will continue to work with our town staff and outside advisors to finalize the review of the property, including environmental, operational, and legal matters. My opinion, which I've stated publicly before, is that any matter with financial or operational consequence should be accounted for in the final purchase price. I would like to stress that the contract affords considerable protections to the town as the buyer of the property and specifically states that at any time during the due diligence period, the town deems the property unsuitable. In its sole discretion, the town may terminate the agreement and the deposit shall be refunded. This provision and the 40 days remaining in the due diligence period should give you comfort that we have ample time and flexibility to explore the remaining issues and ensure that the acquisition remains right for the town. Regarding timing, assuming the RTM approves the acquisition tonight, the deposit will be made in 12 days, and we will continue our work during the remaining 40 days of the due diligence period. The Board of Finance will issue the bonds to pay for the purchase price to enable us to close on September 5th, the date which is 30 days after the due diligence period concludes. This is when the town would take ownership of the property. The Ziegler property is adjacent to Great Island and runs basically south from Rings End Road to the top of Ziegler Cove along Long Neck Point. I was notified late last week that the Ziegler family is once again considering the sale of this property. This property has been for sale multiple times before, along with Great Island as a larger single package. But it was not for sale at the time we contracted to purchase Great Island on May 23rd. We will be analyzing the impact that the possible sale and development of the Ziegler property could have on the town purchase of Great Island during our remaining 40 days of due diligence. I do not believe that we need to acquire both properties. I want to be very clear on that. As we strive to do throughout this process, I will continue to solicit the greatest input from our residents in an open and transparent manner. In closing, I would urge the members of the RTM to vote in favor of acquiring Great Island. Working together in the coming years, I am absolutely confident that we can make smart decisions to both invest in and conserve this incredible asset in a way that Darien residents will enjoy for generations. Thank you for your time.
I have a little logistics. We have 3 people who have signed up to speak from the public, and if they would come down now and find a seat over there, that will save time to have them come. David Voigt, Paul Hendrickson, and Joanna Walsh. We only have one speaker, and that's the one that's right there in the center of the passageway. Other town officials? I see none. Then I will open this to debate on the floor here for the RTM. Those who wish to be recognized to speak, just raise your hand. Yes, please. And you're next.
Again, I'm Laura Pesh-Gray, speaking tonight as an RTM member and a co-chair of the Darien Environmental Group, which is a nonprofit organization that provides information, environmental information to the elementary schools in town. Monica, your proposal of the Great Island, Imagine the Possibilities, I'm sure was well-intended to explore all the possibilities and potentials for this property. I'm sure your goal was to persuade the town and the residents to see all the benefits that could be available to them as a result of the $103 million expenditure. Look at all the possibilities for you and your family. This is where our tax dollars will be going. But it actually kind of concerned me in terms of the overall goal is to preserve the nature
Try
and...
adjusting the mic a little bit, see if that helps.
Okay. Is that better? Great.
Yeah, yeah.
But actually, the proposal and the presentation frightened me and many others in the community, and I'll explain why. As a resident and environmentalist, I want to see this property preserved and kept in as much of its original and natural state as possible. I don't want to see a museum built along with an art center, a public pool, or an amphitheater. A touch tank made me think of an aquarium, and we don't need another aquarium. We have a lovely one in Norwalk. And I especially don't want a parking lot built on the property so cars can have ample parking. We should model assessing the island off of the Glass House property in New Canaan. For those of you who are not familiar, the Glass House was built between 1949 and 1995 by architect Philip Johnson, and it's a National Trust historic site located in New Canaan. The pastoral 49-acre landscape comprises 14 structures, including the Glass House, and features a permanent collection of 20th century painting and sculpture, along with temporary exhibitions. Tours of the site are limited to certain months between April and November, and advanced reservations are recommended. They have a municipal parking lot and bus people to this property rather than having people drive directly to this property. I suggest using this model and an idea like Pear Tree Point and Weed Beach parking lots as ways and areas for people to park, and we can bus people in, rather than spending money on our roads and widening our roads and all of the residents living in that area being impacted negatively. As a historic site owned and operated by the National Trust for Historic Preservation, the Glass House serves as a catalyst for the preservation and interpretation of modern architecture, landscape, and art, and as a canvas for inspiration and experimentation. We should think about modeling this concept and create a mission statement for the Great Island if we choose to purchase this. How can we preserve our nature, history, the aquatic elements? I'm in support of the purchase of this property, but request that this property not be developed in the many ways you suggest. I simply don't want this great island to be an upscale amusement park for hundreds and thousands of people to flock to. We want to preserve this property and the incredible environmental benefits that it possesses. Let's work together to do that. And if it is going to be developed the way, in many ways, I vote no.
Okay.
Thank you.
Laura, could you, do you support the purchase or are you against the purchase? Just for clarification for everybody on the floor. Or you're subject to? Is there a subject to?
I support it subject to not having a parking lot, not accessing it directly. I support it based upon not overbuilding it, not putting a parking lot at all. So if those things are definitely going to go through the way that the town has assessed it and recommended it, I vote no.
Thank you.
This is
Welcome.
a really loud mic. Teresa Vogt, District 6. Between my volunteer work at the schools and my time on the RTM, I have sat through 8 years of budget meetings where every last line item is questioned, sometimes ad nauseum. And each year when I sit in my education committee meetings or when I sit in this room, I hear RTM members say that our budgets cannot continue to grow like this or that our taxes are too high. When I have had conversations with now former elected officials about how we need new sidewalks in town so that students north of DHS who do not get a bus can safely walk to school, I am told that would be too expensive, and we have to worry about those on fixed incomes. It has taken decades to finally put a plan in place to remove the portables from our elementary schools. It took 18 months. Hold on, I'm sorry, I lost that. Oh shoot, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It took 18 months to discuss the $6 million spent on Highland Farm. We all received a letter from a constituent telling us how necessary dredging in Goodwives River Road has been deemed too expensive at $8 million. In 2019, there were discussions about $3 million worth of improvements at Pear Tree Point Beach that many deemed too expensive. During COVID, we sat here and approved a budget that included cuts to the town and education sides because of the fear of a recession, cuts that saved the average taxpayer $150. Yet now, here we are being asked to approve a $103 million land purchase where few discussions have been had, much of it in executive session, where those of us on TJ and SNA or in education have not been privy to those discussions. And they have yielded more questions than they have had answers. The financial assumptions made by the Board of Finance and F&B are best-case scenarios, and they assume that we will not have any infrastructure improvements that need bonding over the next 20 to 30 years. Spending $103 million is simply the beginning on this purchase. We all know that we will need to spend tens of millions of dollars on this property to do all the things that we have been told that we need to do. For that reason, I am against this purchase. We just have not had enough time to do the due diligence.
Okay, thank you. I would suggest, if you're coming to the mic to speak, don't rush yourself. Speak slowly. It's the sound system in here is, I can see everybody struggling a little, and so try and see if that works, that speaking a little slower and carefully, and be sure to enunciate to everybody whether you support or you don't support those. I think it's important that people start with a basic understanding of where you're coming from. Thank you very much. Now, Lois.
Good evening. I'm Lois Schneider from District 1, and I'm speaking on behalf of Sarah Baldwin in District 1 and myself, teamed up. We did an email to our neighborhood, and we sent out 37 emails. And what I want to just do is give a response rather than speaking. I think each of us, I know each of us individually are in support of this, but of the 37 emails, we heard back from 12 people. 11 of the people said yes, absolutely, and one person had some questions, all of which we could answer and would lead them to a yes vote. And there's one other, I had a long conversation with a long-term Darien resident, and his couple of quotes I'd like to just mention is, we have the property and we can do things that are unusual because of the nature of the property. And his other final comment to me was, 30 years from now, people will be asking why there was ever a debate about purchasing this property. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lois. Others, I don't want to miss anybody. Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, yes, please. You were pointing here, right? Yeah, okay. Welcome.
Thank you. My name's Amy Zabatakis. I'm a member of District 5 and a member of the PZ&H Committee. When the opportunity for the town to purchase Great Island first surfaced, I was thrilled. It's an incredible piece of property, and I was very happy that the town was taking seriously the vision and goals set forth in the Town Plan of Conservation and Development to seek to acquire and preserve open space whenever possible. However, once I reviewed the surveys of the property and saw the laundry list of proposed uses put out by our first selectman, I got nervous. My biggest concern is that the purchase would be sold to the public with promises of uses that would not be feasible. But just as importantly to me personally, I do not see how we are actually complying with the Town Plan and conserving one of the last pieces of open space if we're going to add all of these uses: pool, ice rink, marketplace, museum, wedding venue, etc. As a member of the PZ&H Committee, I focused on whether the property could be used for this laundry list of uses put forth. And ultimately, I was the abstaining vote because I felt we don't have enough information yet to definitively say that the public will have sufficient safe access to the property for these uses. But since our committee vote took place, I've spoken to many residents, and every conversation kept coming back to the view that's been stated many times: what's the cost if we don't buy the property? During the first public meeting, our high school students spoke to the need to protect the environment in our green spaces. We need to do this for our future generations. So today, I will vote in favor of the purchase, but my vote comes with a plea to the Board of Selectmen and whatever group we ultimately task with determining uses of the property. Please, please take it slow. I do want to see the tenants moved out as soon as feasible so the public can access the property. But let's do what we can to keep development to a minimum. I hope we can find a way not to have to widen the entrance road to 2 lanes. I would like us to keep the entrance pillars and have 1-lane traffic so that we encourage slow passage through this bucolic entrance. I hope we can find a way to avoid covering large sections of the property with asphalt for parking. If we are buying this property in order to preserve and protect one of the last pieces of open space in town and to preserve this incredible coastal resource, then let's work really hard to find a way to truly protect and preserve it. So I will vote yes today, but hesitantly, trusting in the financial models that have been set forth by our Finance and Budget Committee, and with the caveat that I hope in our rush to spend $103 million on this purchase, we won't find ourselves forced to make unwise decisions to monetize the land in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Very nice. Yes, sir. Oh, now I can see you, Peter. I got to get new prescriptions.
Good evening. My name is Peter Orfanos. I live at 67 Raymond Street in District 6. I'm a 25-year resident of the town. And about 2 weeks ago, I stood up here and expressed my reservations about this transaction, hoping that many of them would have been resolved. And to a large extent, they haven't. I think that it's our job on the RTM as good financial stewards to question everything and not to assume too many things. And my reservations primarily focus on skepticism that in reality, despite the modeling, that our existing town services are going to be impacted negatively, whether they be public service, whether it be public works, and especially the schools. I've been reminded by my constituents repeatedly that people move to Darien because of the schools. It would be great to have this park. I applaud, to be fair, I applaud the work of the first selectman to bring this opportunity to us. However, it's with reluctance. I do not support it. I believe we are facing a volatile economic environment in front of us. We have a situation where we're going to be bonding in 2 years for this authorization, and we don't know what the interest rates are going to be. As it was expressed in one situation, are we going to put $103 million and take it to the interest rate casino and hope that it comes up in our favor? I hope it does. I hope that I'm wrong. But my constituents have said numerous times that they are concerned about all of these things. I'm hoping that if this does pass, we focus on ways how to mitigate the cost through various means, whether it be selling Highland Farms, focusing on how to bring in private-public partnerships. And finally, like I said, I wanted to, in this case, to be the voice of some of the arguments that were made repeatedly against the transaction, and therefore I do not support it. Respectfully, thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Yes, sir.
Dan Guller, District 4. This is my first in-person RTM meeting, so hi.
And reading off your cell phone, there's guts. Yeah, that's good.
I am. Darien made national news a few months ago. February 2nd, 2022, Associated Press. Affluent suburb rejects plan to take students from Norwalk. We rejected the school choice program, would have taken 16 students, and opponents cited larger class sizes, uncertainties related to the COVID-19 pandemic, and the possible financial burden on the town in rejecting the plan. When we approve this, whether it's now or sometime in the future, another article will be written about the town who rejected 16 kindergartners because of financial reasons, just bought a private island. We need to be prepared for that. Is it worth that kind of reputational damage. And I feel like that is our job. One of our jobs is the RTM, to protect the town's reputation. I don't feel we have enough information to set ourselves up for this kind of, frankly, national ridicule. We've had a lot of meetings, we've been told a lot of things, but a lot of it is fiction. A lot of it is wishes and hopes of what it could be, but we don't have any facts. It could be a great place for weddings, but for those of you who've toured the property know there is no building that can host a wedding more than 50 people. We've been told that there's a developer just waiting to chomp at the bit, but that reminds me of every time I go shopping for a used car and the salesman says, well, someone was looking at this one just this morning and they're coming back this afternoon with their checkbook. I feel like we're being played on that. Could be not. But that's what it sounds like to me. We've been told to let our imaginations run wild. But I can't approve something if I don't have facts, and I don't have actual concrete facts. I need to see plans. If I want fiction, I'll take a summer beach read. But for now, I'm voting no. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Oh, okay. I'll take this gentleman at the back first and then come here. Thanks. Greetings.
Thank you, Seth. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, you're getting at the right distance.
Now hear this. My name is Frank Edelman. I'm a District 6 Vice Chair. This is not my first in-person meeting, Dan. I'm reluctantly voting no on this, and it's very reluctant. But I have two critical points I'd like to make. First of all, the most important word about this decision is going to be governance. Governance about what goes on the island and governance about how it impacts our budgets after the transaction. I have advocated, and Rolf, I thank you for your outlining this in your comments. I've advocated for an independent Great Island Commission to be composed of members of the community, as well as a number of town officials ex officio, to be established pursuant to Connecticut general statutes that would have the same assessment authority that the Sewer Commission does, the impact being to segregate the operational and financial management of this island from the town budget and the town processes. It's not that we can't do it, it's that this is a huge project and we really need to keep this separate, and both from an operational and a financial point of view. And there are definitely ways we can do this. Secondarily, I just want to say I sense for what it's worth, the feedback I've gotten from my constituents, and I think we've all seen in my informal tally, is running about 2 to 1 against, and that impacts my vote as well. And then last, I just want to say that for everyone who is thinking of voting yes tonight, I never want to hear anybody use the phrase again, I pinch pennies till they scream, or bragging about how sharp their pencils are, because this purchase is the epitome of a nice to have. I'd love to have it, but if we have $100 million for Great Island, we also have a mental health crisis at the high school and the middle school and the elementary schools. And we have seniors who need support in town, and we have a whole bunch of town amenities that need to be preserved and expanded. And I never want to hear anybody say again, we can't afford X because we just spent $100 million on Great Island. If we can't afford whatever that's going to be in the future that we can't anticipate, then we don't have money for this tonight, because this is not as high a priority as kids' mental health or the other things that we need to do for our seniors and for other citizens in town who need the town's support. So reluctantly, I would love for this to be better structured, to be better defined, to understand the governance. But without that, I can't support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Excuse me. Yes, Jim Cameron.
Apologies for the hobbling. I'm recovering from an ankle injury. Jim Cameron,
perfectly.
District 4. I think Seth and I are going to have a race outside afterwards as well, too. Call me old school. I have an index card, and I'm going to be very brief. I want to talk about process. The timing of this decision is not of our making. The deadline was imposed upon us. We have done extraordinary things in a very short period of time. Monica, Kate Bush, our amazing town administrator, the boards of selectmen, the boards of finance, town staff has been all over this project, and all of you on the RTM, I think, deserve the gratitude of everyone else in this town. We should be proud of the diligence that we have put into this process. We have been fully transparent and as participative as possible, and TV 79 has done its part. We have carried 17 meetings in 3 weeks, totaling 18 hours. All the RTM committees... Thank you. It's the first applause of the evening. All the RTM committees, 2 video tours, district caucuses, public hearings, and people have been engaged. Our viewership is off the charts. So thanks to everybody who has participated, who has reached out, who has emailed us, and especially thanks to the TV 79 team. You don't see them very often, but I'm trying to let you know who they are on social media. Brianna and Kevin up in the booth tonight doing the shoot. Jake, Tyler, Christian, John, Elisa, those are the people that shoot the meetings. So I'm very proud of the decision-making process, its openness and its transparency. This is what democracy looks like. Thank you.
David York, District 6. Not speaking off the script, but just following on from the gentleman before me. This has been, from my perspective, an extremely well-run, well-organised, under very tight constraints, tight timelines, and an efficient process. The amount of information available to RTM members and the public has been widely available, and anyone who hasn't been able to get a full handle on that, then that's unfortunate, but it's been all out there, and many of us have taken the opportunity. In that regard, I want to applaud all involved in the process, particularly led by Monica at the start and everyone else trickling down in the various RTM committees. I think it's exceptional. As far as the project, I've heard everyone's concerns, I've heard them from constituents, and I've heard the pros. I think if we pass the opportunity now, there's no room for regret in the future. If we go ahead with the purchase and information and circumstance dictate a rethink, we have that liberty. But if we forfeit that liberty and the opportunity now, it would be gone forever. I myself see unlimited potential and was fortunate to experience and witness what is an incredible natural sanctuary. That, yes, agree with Amy's comments earlier about limiting development, being very cautious, all that sort of stuff. But if we forfeit the opportunity to own this and figure out the best way forward, it is gone forever. We've heard the song Pave Paradise, put up a parking lot. Well, there would be very quickly 40 residences put in there with docks and, you know, some of them people living in New York, boating out, and who knows what environmental impact that would have. I think the town needs to make this purchase. We can afford it. The numbers are clear. The information's out there. It can be done, and not to the detriment of anything else. I believe we should vote yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll get Jan and then Patty.
I'm Jan Raymond from District 4. Back up.
Sounds good.
Oh, it sounds good. All right. I feel like I've lived through this before.
Jan and I are looking at each other because we won't get into when we started.
I'm a graduate of Darien High School. Both of my children are graduates from Darien High School. I suspect I may have grandchildren who will be graduates of Darien High School. I served on the Board of Education of Darien for 6 years, and I was committed as anyone to maintaining our reputation as having one of the best school districts in the country. I really don't believe this is an either-or situation. I really believe that we can buy this property and maintain the schools. It requires the commitment of everybody in this room, and we're all going to have a chance to vote on both the education budget and this budget. I would like to say that I watched us, when I was significantly younger, pass up the property that became Red Rose Circle, I think it is, and some additional property in that part of Darien. I think that we might not be in the situation we're in now had we taken advantage of the opportunity to purchase more open space. We didn't. There was another spot of open, potentially open space that we didn't buy, and I'm sorry I can't remember where it was right now. But I am going to vote for this tonight, and like so many other speakers, I'm going to hope I'm voting for it because we will commit as rapidly as we possibly can to maintain this as an open space, that we will not be building whatever the swimming pools and the ice skating rinks and everything else. I'm hoping we can maintain what is so joyous about it, and I hope we recognize that some of the buildings that are there require us to be trustworthy about them. I don't know if everyone here has toured it, but the equestrian facility, the stone building that's there now, was designed by the same person who designed Grand Central Station. And that adds a little bit of something to it. I'm not sure quite what. But I will vote for this enthusiastically, and I will be back here whenever anyone is talking about making significant cuts on the education budget of this town, and I serve on the Education Committee now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Great. Patty Baumgartner?
Hi. Okay. Is that good? Patty Finn Baumgartner, District 1 Parks and Rec Committee. I just want to say, and Jim, you stole my line. I was going to thank you first. I either attended every meeting, a lot of Board of Selectmen meetings, I watched Board of Finance meetings, I went to the public hearing, I watched all the committee meetings for every single RTM meeting, so thank you for that. I think there actually was a lot of information out there. I want to thank Monica. Many of us have been on the RTM with her for a long time, and we know she's transparent, and we know she's giving us as much information as she possibly can. There was a deadline, and we had to react. So I just wanted to address that. At the same time, I want to say I completely get Teresa Voigt's concern on education. Dan, I get your concern as well. Open choice decision wouldn't have been mine, so I get that. I will be supporting education budgets as well as town budgets. So I just want to, on that note, say, I'm going to just kind of talk about some of the quick things. You know, we hear about Shakespeare on the Sound. We know Rowayton does it, right? We know there's things like that at Waveney. We can do that, and it doesn't involve a huge amphitheater. It really doesn't. It's a tent. It's open space. But to this point, let's think of it beyond just kind of professional actors coming in. Our Theater 308 from Darien High School is incredible. Let's get these kids out there in the spring and in the fall and in summer, right? Our Quiz Bowl team, nationally ranked Quiz Bowl team out of Middlesex, let's have them perform and quiz us and learn from that. Our Geography B team, right? We had a kid almost win Jeopardy from town. There's so much we can do for our students. You know, it's been a difficult 4 months. I don't need to go through that. But one of the things I read from a psychologist who said how he's changed, how he talks to his people, his patients are, he says, the first thing I say to them is put nature into your day. Whether you're starting with a walk or ending with a walk or going out at lunch, put nature in your day. That's what's going to help you get through depression. That's going to help you make you feel better. Whether you're a young kid, whether you're a high school kid, whether you're an older person who's aging in place by himself, this great island can offer us that opportunity. The Art Barn, we've heard that. And I know that we've heard people talk about having artists in residence. But I personally think we have so many incredible artists in town. Curtis Butler from District 1 is one of them. He's being polite over there. That alone, I'm not sure we need them in residence on the property. We can just have our artists come out and paint and perhaps teach us. But the kids from Darien High School can also, if we do an art barn, be showcasing a lot of that work. So it's out there, and it's not just at DHS. The walking trails is part of Parks and Rec's master plan when they did the survey. Walking trails was one of the top things that was requested in town. And so we've all heard about the tree canopy there, amazing. Biking, fishing, I love watching those kids fish down at Rings End or a dad in the sun in the morning. There's nothing better. So now we have that space to do that there. Community gardens at Cherry Lawn have a 30-person wait list. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could have some gardens on another section of town to spread that out? I grew up in New Orleans, so I'm going to put in a pitch for little jazz quartets on Sunday in the summer. Amazing, right? So we're not talking a physical 4-room sports complex. We're talking about things that we can do as a community to bring our community together. I know you said, Dan, that the wedding thing, but you know, I think it'd be kind of cool if my son or daughter or somebody in here someday got married there. And again, it doesn't have to be in a building there. It can be at a tent with that beautiful view in the background. And then I'm just going to wind up here, wind up and wind down. The horseback riding, I know the stables people are debating them, but I think it's such a unique thing that we can offer. I don't know why we have to send our kids to Meade or New Canaan to do it. I think we could do these incredible programs there. Let's see, the last thing I want to say is, again, it gives not only adults but students the chance to unplug and enjoy nature. I want to thank Joe Michelli, Bill Van Loan, and Barbara Thorne for really helping to influence my vote. They are people who have been on the RTM for a long time. I respect them. They've lived in Darien for a long time, and each one of them said to me, we need to buy this. We can't let this go. So we recently celebrated Darien's 200th birthday, and we, as part of that, the Darien Foundation did the heritage markers throughout town that you might have seen. So I'm going to say, I believe that fortune favors the bold, and I'd like to see Great Island be part of our next Darien heritage marker. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Oh, I know. I'm getting through the RTM here as we speak. We're rolling along. Frank Kemp. Frank spoke to me earlier, so. Frank's chair of TGSNA, but we're not a named committee in this.
Frank Kemp, District 4. Early in this process, I wrote a letter to the editor, which was published, and I read much of the same information into the public hearing. You may have heard it. I told the story of Westport's acquisition of Longshore, New Canaan's acceptance of the responsibility for maintaining Waveney, and Greenwich's tortured and delayed acquisition of Todd's Point. You've heard all these stories in the past week. Each of these acquisitions were wise civic decisions. The right stuff by the Board of Selectmen and RTM. I've also read the letters that have been circulating the past few days, and even today, particularly the negative ones, recommending that we turn down this opportunity. Most of the negative letters cite the unknowns. the lack of time to consider the options, the lack of specificity as to what the property will be used for. Most of the financial concerns have been addressed by our Board of Finance and the spreadsheets published by our own Finance and Budget Committee. And thank you, Jack. And thank you to the whole F&B team. The negative points center around the unknown what ifs and why haven't we done that? These letters miss the mark. The financial questions have been answered by reasonable people with no crystal balls, but a steady look at what is known and the options we have. Given the best analysis that we can do at this point, and the realistic answers that have been computed, it all boils down to whether or not we should buy the property. The programs will play out in a democratic way. They always do. The point is, it's now our duty to buy the property. Well, in a few minutes, I hope that you will join me in voting yes, voting for the town's future, our legacy, and our responsibility to the future. It's our civic duty. Yes, it has some costs, but these are the costs of doing the right thing. Thank you in advance for doing the right thing tonight.
Thank you very much, Frank. Others, before I move on to the public comment? Yes, Holly.
I'll be quick. Holly Giordano, Vice Chair, District 3. I first went to Great
Holly.
Island. Hi, I'll step in.
Now you're doing well. A little closer, maybe.
I first went to Great Island a few years ago, actually. I wear many hats in town. I work in real estate, and when it was for sale, I was just astounded. There is a no trespassing sign out there, so of course I never trespass. And we were invited, and I couldn't believe how amazing this property was that I never even knew really existed. So for me, I'm not buying a $20 million house on the water, although I wish I could. It's definitely on my list. I think, having everyday people be able to enjoy this and take that in, that many people might not even really know it's there and what it entails, is absolutely amazing, and I applaud the town for having the guts to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Others? Yes, Joe.
Joe Michelli, District 4. I gave my first speech in this room 62 years ago. This issue we're dealing with tonight is the most important issue I've seen in town in my lifetime. This is a chance of a lifetime to buy this property. We've become spoiled in Darien with the Ziegler family. They've been such good neighbors. They've allowed their property to be used by different organizations. They've helped, they have the Droton fireboat out there. They've done a lot of things for the community. And now that the Great Island is for sale, if we don't take the opportunity to take control of it, I'd hate to see what's going to happen to it, because there's a good chance we're going to see 830G in action. And I don't think any of us want to see that. And the other thing is, if that happens, we're going to probably need another school, or at least redistricting. And school parents don't like that word, redistricting. So I think that the best thing for the town is that we buy this property. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. If we're ready, I'll move to public. Excuse me. Oh, Clara? Thank you, Clara.
I'm just going to make this very quick. I'm Clara Sartori. I represent District 2 in the RTM, and I am just a little bit sorry to see that some of the comments relating to cutting school budgets and that, you know, this is going to be hard for school parents. Darien has been incredibly generous to its schools over the past 30 years with new schools, approved budgets, you know, mostly anything that has been requested has been approved after some public scrutiny. And I would say to the gentleman who said he doesn't want to hear any more about sharp pencils are what enabled us to have the money to at least approach the idea of Great Island and a lot of the other initiatives that have been taken. So I don't want to see anything cut that's important, but I also want some acknowledgement that the schools here have been well supported. The town has been incredibly generous to them. And I don't want to see this be a schools versus the rest of the town type thing. We can do both. And we also have to say we need to step up, as Joe said, take control of the situation and be good stewards of our town. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. By the way, you did very well with that microphone. That's terrific. Yes.
I'm Carolina Magoy, District 3, and chair of the district. You all received my letter, so I'm not going to bother you with that.
You can take the mask off if you like.
It doesn't matter. I just want to say that I wish that this would go to referendum and we would get a vote from all our voters and not only us. That's it.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move to public comment. 3 minutes each. I recognize David Voigt, 22 Circle Road. Welcome, David.
So,
Christy,
as Seth said,
you got the timer?
sure, it's David Vogt, 22 Circle Road. Before I make my comment, I just want to thank all the RTM committees that did all this great diligence. But that being said, before you vote on this Great Island proposal, I just want to distill down the data a little bit more. And I know Jack did some work on it in the Board of Finance, but I think it got muddied a little bit in terms of his presentation. So since 2018, Darien's operating budget increased at a 1.8% CAGR over 4 years. Put another way, we added $10 million to the budget in 4 years. Over the next 5 years, we're asking taxpayers to commit to $40 million of incremental spending, or 4.5% growth in the budget per year for 5 years. Just so we're clear, the Board of Finance and Jack has repeatedly stated we have unlimited debt issuance capacity and near-term 100% tax compliance for reasons for justifying why our debt should go from $80 million to $240 million. However, in the past, that logic wasn't applied to other changes in the budget. So I would expect going forward, from a capital perspective and an operating perspective, the approval process should be met with the same approval process that we went through with this. Basically, no change to the budgets and full-on compliance in terms of basically voting yes, up and down the board. For example, if the Board of Ed budget increases at just 4% a year, which is 1% above the 3% growth over the last 4 to 5 years, the incremental operating expense is only a little bit more than $1 million, a rounding error. And I would argue that $1 million increase to the Board of Ed budget would significantly retain top talent, which would be a material net positive for Darien property values relative to neighboring towns. So in summary, I'm asking you to consider 2 things before you vote tonight. First, do you believe the Board of Finance will permit the town's budget to grow at least 4.5% a year for the next 5 years if we purchase Great Island? And that compares to sub 2% over the prior 4 years. If you're wavering or you think that answer is no, when you look out over the next 5 years, what subsectors of the budget do you expect the town to scale back? Should we scale back on protective services like police and fire? Should we scale back on the benefits of hardworking employees in this town like Kate Bush? Should we cut spending from the town's jewel, the school system? I will leave you with some facts. Those 3 budget categories account for 80% of the operating budget of this town. Add in the debt service from Great Island and HHR, and we're up to 90%. There's no flexibility. So I'll leave you with that. I'm against this proposal because it absolutely will limit town services and create a tremendous amount of pressure going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next, I'll recognize Paul Hendrickson.
Good evening. My name is Paul Hendrickson. I'm a member of the Board of Finance, but I come before you to speak for myself, not for my board. My parents moved to Darien in August of 1962. I had the good opportunity to watch Joe Michelli play football for the high school for a state championship. I first entered this building as a 7th grader in 1963. At that time, Darien had 33% open space. Now there is 3% open space in town. That's a decrease of over 90% in that time. Going back to what Ms. Raymond said earlier, since 1962, Darien has had the opportunity to purchase numerous properties. The tip of Long Neck Point for less than $1 million in the early 70s. The Trenley property where Red Rose Circle is located for about $850,000 in the mid-70s. Kelly Nursery, which was just south of the Oxford School on Mansfield Avenue. The Duhame property, now Avalon, in the early 2000s. And the Procaccini property, now Kensett, also in the 2000s. There are also probably other properties of which I am unaware that we had the opportunity to purchase. Looking at the finances, isn't it remarkable that Jack Davis's RTM F&B committee came within so close to what the Board of Finance estimated, and we did it independently. Also, there have been questions about schools. In 1997, I first ran for the Board of Finance, and Seth will remember this, as a candidate supported by a CDSP and forced a primary and won that primary and have supported the school budgets in the 17 of 25 years I've been on the board. And that support will not waver. Some additional financing items about the proposed financing you should know. The bonds will have a call provision, allowing the town to refinance when it desires. The town currently has $26.5 million in its general fund, and thanks to Kathy Larkins, our tax collector, our tax collection rate has averaged 99.83% over the last 10 years. As I said in previous meetings, this is our last best chance. I urge you to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I now recognize Joanna Walsh. Welcome, Joanna.
Joanna Walsh, 17 Pleasant Street. There are still many things we don't know. Just tonight, we found out that there is extensive flooding on the island and an additional parcel has gone up for sale. What else will we learn? Were pesticides used in the apple orchard? That kind of remediation can be cost prohibitive. And I've asked many questions before, but really what I want to speak to everyone here who isn't sure that this is the right thing to do. I have heard that many people have misgivings. The committee members, the committee's members that voted, that were abstentions, were because they didn't have enough information. Members have been working hard to get comfortable with the numbers. They don't think it's a great idea, but they don't want to get in the way. Here's the thing. If you think that this is a bad idea, it's your job to get in the way. You are literally here to make that decision for the town. So if you think that this will not blow up our credit rating, will not fundamentally change our town finances, and that you know everything there is to know about the island, that everything has been disclosed, if you are completely confident in all of that, then sure, vote yes. But if you have questions, like I do, and many other residents in town do, be a little brave tonight and vote no. Thank you.
Thank you for stepping up. Are there any further comments from the RTM, or are you ready to vote? looks to me like you're ready to vote. Therefore, all those in favor, rise, please. I just want to say congratulations to everybody on this great turnout tonight, on short notice, really. Now, are we ready for no votes? No votes, please rise. Okay. Everybody counted? And abstentions, please. Okay. We'll tally the votes and get back to you with the results. Looks favorable. I suppose I need the results. I can't go any further till we have the results on the first vote, so I'll wait here until we get that count. Item 22-21 passes, 68 to 13, 16 yes, 13 no, no abstentions. Yeah, sure. Item 22-21 passes, 68 in favor, 13 no, no abstentions. Now, I call on Jack Davis for the next item, 22-22. Jack Davis, Chair of F&B.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3, and Chair of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I move RTM Resolution 22-22, appropriating $103,465,000 for the purchase of real property and authorizing the issuance of bonds and/or notes in the amount of $103,465,000 to meet said appropriation. Is there a second? I see Louisa. If there's no objection, this resolution is long. I waive the reading of the resolution. This is the second of two related purchases. 22-21 was just approved and authorized the first selectman to execute a purchase agreement. However, as I mentioned before, there are no funds, and so we have to figure out how we're paying for this. This resolution also needs to be approved by the RTM or the transaction is not valued. There's really two aspects to this resolution. The first is the purchase price of $103 million. And then there's additional costs, including debt issuance costs and costs relating to the purchase that's not otherwise appropriated in either the current year's fiscal 22 budget or approved budget for fiscal 23. These costs include environmental studies, any engineering costs, potential demolition and disposal costs, and other related purchase costs. By adding these into the appropriation, these costs are being amortized over the life of the debt. Now, there's a little bit of a twist on this authorization debt. It's yet to be determined if there might be non-governmental revenue aspect of this purchase. If a non-governmental aspect exists, that portion of the purchase would require to be funded by taxable bonds versus tax-free bonds. Taxable bonds has about a 75 or 3/4% increased cost. As such, the town municipal advisor has recommended that for the first 2 years that the notes are issued, and the notes would be bond anticipation notes, better known as BANs, as the town would fully expect to finally issue bonds at a future date. The BANs will have less than a 1-year maturity with interest payable in the next fiscal year. Thus, the BAN issued in fiscal year 23 will not record the interest payment until fiscal year 24. And BAN issued in fiscal year 24 would not record the interest payment until fiscal 25. Therefore, it's our understanding that the BAN accomplishes a couple of things. It provides additional time to determine the taxable versus tax-free portion of the debt. If we issue everything tax-free, it's our understanding that if we then decide that some of this has to be taxable, we have to pull it all back and start all over again. That is not good use of our money. It also delays the payment of principal and thus allows the issuance to take advantage of the paydown in the current debt service, which is in the current fiscal year we just approved, $10.4 million in 23, going to $7.7 in 26, and actually going to almost $6 million prior to HHR and the other debt that was planned. You've heard me say on many occasions that the Board of Finance has done an excellent job in managing our debt, figuring out whether or not we're paying principal, we're delaying principal, we're doing this, we're having calls, we're having that. Two other areas of note. The F&B model anticipates debt service to rise to $22.5 million versus the 19 plus in the previous analysis presented. In addition, the estimated outstanding debt presented was, I believe, $243 million in a public meeting. F&B anticipates this debt to exceed $250 million and probably a little bit more. Part of that is that our model includes $10 million of capital items in the budget, $2 million a year of what we typically do, $8 million in known projects such as the reimagined libraries, which did not appear to be included in the 243 total, and $21 million in investments in Great Island. For whatever reason, it ends up being done for that. The municipal advisor has recommended that this debt, the Great Island, be issued over 30 years, which is allowed under state law. As previously mentioned, the 3 tranches of school debt from HHR are planned to be issued with 20-year debt, but could also be issued with 30-year bonds. These and other options are available to the Board of Finance, who will ultimately make the final decision based upon input from the town's municipal advisor. The RTM Finance and Budget Committee met on June 15th and voted 9 in favor and 1 against this resolution to provide the funding through bonds and/or notes for the purchase of Great Island, and recommends the approval of this resolution to the full RTM. Providing the minority report, Peter has spoken. The vote not in favor is primarily due to the concern that operating budgets would be squeezed in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. The committees have pretty much spoken on this, but I'll ask if there are other committees that wish to speak on this particular item. I see none. Town officials wish to speak on this? I see none. RTM. Anyone wish to speak on this item? Okay. Ready to vote? All those in favor, please rise. No votes, please. Abstentions? Thank you. Okay. I don't have to wait. Okay. I'll get you the results on that, but in the meantime, we'll proceed to item 22-23, for the Finance and Budget Committee. Jack Davis, Chair.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3 Chair of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I move Resolution 22-23 to establish a special revenue fund and to appropriate funds to be deposited into said account for the management of Great Island. Do I have a second? We have it? Yep, okay. I'll read this resolution in its entirety. I only read the short ones. Whereas there has been a request to create a special revenue fund and appropriate funds to be deposited into said account for the management of Great Island, and whereas the initial source of funds is the income from rental property of Great Island, and whereas going forward this will be part of the annual budget process, and whereas on an annual basis rental income is approximately $800,400 with an estimated expense of $370,000, and whereas for the fiscal year 23, the town anticipates 6 months of revenue, and whereas any of the funds are collected and not expended will remain in the new fund and will be used for the other Great Island expenses, now and therefore be it resolved that the special revenue fund is hereby created for the management of Great Island, now and therefore be it further resolved, the representative town meeting of the town of Darien appropriates the sum of $400,200 to be deposited in the special revenue fund to be used for the management of Great Island. Special revenue funds are governed by the Government Accounting Standards Boards, better known as GATSB. That's a really interesting thing to keep on reading if you want to go to sleep one night. It's number 54. These funds are established whereby the expenses are funded through the collection of revenues that are not taxes. The town has several of these. Parking fees pays for the parking fund expenses. Sewer fees pays for the sewer fund. And we recently established the Park and Rec Program Fund, which pays for the Park and Rec program expenses. Such funds are outside of the Board of Selectmen operating budget, and expenses are not included in the amount needed to be raised through taxes. Should the revenue decrease to the point where they are no longer covering those expenditures, the fund should be closed. A similar case exists for Great Island. Rental income approximates $800,000 from 9 sources. Estimated expenses are only $370,000. For fiscal '23, the town anticipates 6 months of revenue, which approximates $400,200. As some of you might be aware, the town has issued a cease and desist on the commercial operations of the stable. That cease and desist is currently in the Planning and Zoning Commission process. Even if the rental revenues were to stop, which is approximately $216,000, the town believes that the revenues will still offset the estimated expenses, and in our review, F&B agrees. The F&B committee met on June 15th and voted unanimously in favor of this resolution and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Okay, we're rolling along. Item 22-22 passed 67 in favor, 10 no, 3 abstentions. Are there other committees that wish to report on this item? See none. Town officials? I see none. Members of the RTM? Comments? Okay, looks like you're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. Ready for no votes? No votes, please. All set. Abstentions? Okay, we have to wait till we get the results of this vote. Item 2223 passes 77 for, 3 against, no abstentions. I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Oh, I see many. All those in favor, please rise. Congratulations.